medic in the Army, and a Navy corpsman in the Marine Corps, responsible for my men and their health every day. I understand firsthand the health challenges that impact men. Many of my patients come to me because they've noticed a lack of energy, loss of strength, increased belly fat, and even depression. Low T can impact your whole life, but so can proper treatment of it. And hearing that my patients are back to living life to the fullest, that's the best part of my job.
Guys, if you're looking for affordable, guaranteed low T and ED solutions, contact Revive for a free T-check and exam today, saving you $199. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Discover the best of senior living at Trio Orem and Trio South Ogden. Today's older adults aren't wrapping up their life's journey, they're seeking a new one. And Trio Independent Living is here to help them do just that. With a smart, modern, and connected lifestyle, residents cultivate relationships and maximize independence through signature programs like Prime Fit Wellness that bring living well and well-being to life. Welcome to the new age of senior living. Schedule your visit at leisurecare.com/Utah today.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Right now, we're looking at a nice and quiet drive along all the Valley freeways, including I-15 north and southbound between Ogden and Roy. No accidents on our freeways or our main secondaries. Box Elder County has gone to the birds. Spring migration is here at Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. See what visitors are chirping about with Box Elder County. For info, activities, and more, visit boxeldercounty.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, a cold front bringing valley rain and mountain snow this afternoon. More rain moves in ahead of Easter weekend. Right now, 54 degrees and cloudy and windy here in Salt Lake. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
In the search for real leaders in today's world, we often shrug our shoulders when we look at politicians, elected officials, business leaders doing bad things, and we say there just isn't anymore. Many people say character doesn't count, that integrity isn't all that important, that holding on to principles makes you less powerful. Well, it's time to think again about what we think we know about what it means to be a statesman or a stateswoman, what it means to actually lead. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, if you bought into the arguments of the day that character doesn't count anymore in high position, in places that we used to use with some honor the term leader and leadership, statesman, stateswoman, and many just kind of shrug and say, nah, those days are over. In a social media age where getting attention and likes and being outrageous are the currency of the day, there just isn't space for that kind of leader anymore. Well, in the passing yesterday of Senator Joe Lieberman at the age of 82, we have someone who was a model in that space, who proved that character does count, that integrity is important, that holding on to principle does give you power and influence and impact and helps you leave a legacy that's actually worth leaving. So I want to reflect just a little bit on the life and legacy of Senator Joe Lieberman. He was a friend of this show. He was a friend of mine, and to so many. I don't know very many people who knew Senator Lieberman at any level who didn't say, yeah, he was a friend. In fact, one of the most interesting things, I've had people in all kinds of positions texting over the last 24 hours since we heard the news of Senator Lieberman passing away, who didn't say something to the effect of, he changed me. I became a better person. I became a better leader. I became a better parent. I became a better friend because I had the chance to interact with Joe Lieberman. And so we're going to go through a few things. As many of you know, we did feature him on the show a number of times. Had the opportunity to sit down with him in his office in New York and in Washington, D.C. over the years. And we're actually going to share on the show today some sound of some interviews that has never aired before. some content that we haven't shared that were part of other interviews and things that didn't get used in television or on radio. And so we're going to give you some unique things about Senator Lieberman in his own words. And so let's start with something that was very important to Senator Lieberman. This actually came from an interview we did for a special on KSL TV, A More Perfect Union. And we sat down with Senator Lieberman and we talked about the extraordinary achievement that our Constitution is, coming out of a process that was difficult, challenging, raucous, but ultimately led to the miracle of Philadelphia.
So the Constitution really was an extraordinary achievement for those founding fathers and states, and they balanced a lot. They set an example for us in the Constitutional Convention. They had some very profound differences, and they resolved them by treating each other civilly, even when they had really serious disagreements, and ultimately negotiating compromises without which they could not have adopted the Constitution and really secured the future of the United States of America. Because here we are, more than 230 years later, and this Constitution is still providing us with the ground rules of American society, but also is the foundation of what really distinguishes us, which is that we are a rule of law society.
Balancing that rule of law with compassion and what's required by the Constitution was a hallmark of Senator Lieberman's time in public service. We also spent some time talking about the role of religion in America, and he turned immediately to George Washington's farewell address for some perspective.
George Washington in the farewell address said, and I'm paraphrasing, do not suppose that America will be a moral nation without the power of faith and religion. So there have to be other sources, other motivations for good behavior that are non-governmental. And Washington and a lot of the founding fathers felt that there was none better to play that role than religion. That was true then, and it's true today. And the amazing thing, of course, about the founders is that they did that, although they were all really Christians, they did it without creating an official religion. In fact, in the First Amendment, they decreed that there could not be ever in America the establishment of a official religion.
He went on to discuss some of the other components of how important it was to have a moral society, and that it was going to be institutions outside of government that would actually foster that, that it really was a cottage industry, that it wasn't something that government could decree. But he went even further than that as we talked about the role of religion in America and where we go next.
Religious freedom is a premise, and I think faith is a premise for a lot of the rights that were embraced in our Constitution. But freedom of religion is not enough and hasn't been enough in America to make us a truly free society. We have to have all those other freedoms that are dear to us.
I want to round out this first little bit of our conversation with former Senator Joe Lieberman, of course, who passed away yesterday at the age of 82 after an extraordinary life of service to country, to community, to his faith. And we talked about the pursuit of happiness, some of the principles of the Declaration, and that they did transcend government in every way.
Well, we say it in the Declaration of Independence, the rights to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, equal rights, were not originated by the great statesman who wrote the Declaration of Independence. They are the gift of our Creator, the endowment of our Creator, as the Declaration of Independence says. So that's the premise of everything else that follows. We're all created in the image of God. So it's the eternal foundation for the freedoms that the Constitution provides. And it was very much in the minds, from everything I've read, of the men who wrote the Constitution. They were not all religious in the sense that we mean, but they were all deists. They all believed in God.
Such an important perspective, I think, in terms of the society here in the United States of America. We've reminisced a lot about how committed he was to his Jewish faith, that he would not do politics on Friday evening through Saturday evening, that he would observe the Sabbath and his Jewish faith, and that he actually wrote an entire book on this. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show today. But he talked about how important it was for the people of this country to slow down, to stop, to rest, and to disconnect from the race and chase that we often pursue in this country. He talked to me in terms of how that would actually help us make better decisions, how it would make us to be better leaders if we would just learn to slow down and stop, because it gives us a chance to reflect and to think differently. Well, we're going to stay with the conversation about former Senator Joseph Lieberman, an extraordinary life, as we continue to reflect on his passing yesterday at the age of 82. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Artillery fire in Europe.
Russia launching its biggest missile attack.
Gunfire maims soldiers and civilians in the Middle East.
Humanitarian crisis.
And at home, we can barely stand in the same room.
We've never been more divided.
This spring, start over. The 194th Annual General Conference of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, starting next Saturday. In your car at 102.7 FM and 1160 AM, on every smart speaker, and streaming live on the app for KSL News Radio.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you have a drain that's clogged or backed up, after you've tried the plungers and products, the next step usually involves some kind of drain snake or cabling equipment. You see, sometimes the blockage is far enough down the line that you need special equipment that most homeowners just don't have. That's where the Drains Department at Any Hour Services can help. A drain snake can clear most blockages and get the water flowing again, and clearing blocked drains is what our Drains Department does day in and day out. So if you're a homeowner with a drain line that's clogged or backed up and you'd like one of our drain technicians to come and snake the line for you, it's only $29. Yep, you heard that right. Any Hour Services will snake any drain line with normal access for only $29. Sinks, showers, tubs, toilets, floor drains, laundry drains, even that sewer main line that connects to the city. We'll snake any line for just $29. For help with your drain issues, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7700. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. There are so many wonderful things coming up right around the corner here in the state of Utah. Take, for example, Conference Weekend in downtown Salt Lake City. Where are you going to take those special visitors from out of town for a great, great dinner? How about Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Or take the drive up Parley's Canyon and go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse at Hotel Park City. The food is beyond compare. Whether it's a steak or seafood or poultry, whatever it might be, you will never have a better meal than the meal waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And the side dishes, the desserts, and the attention to detail, your serving staff is absolutely amazing at Ruth's Chris. And don't forget all the other great things that are coming up, too. You know, maybe you're going to go to the theater, a movie. Maybe you're going to head up and do a little skiing. The entertainment is waiting for you here in the state of Utah, and the great meal is waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Jazz Plus is here. With Jazz Plus, you can watch games live from your TV, computer, tablet, or phone. So don't miss any of the action when you're at home or away. Can't get enough of your favorite team? Go behind the scenes and see what the team is up to on and off the court. With flexible plans, you can choose what works for you, from full season to monthly, or just pick a single game you want to watch. Sign up and subscribe today at UtahJazzPlus.com.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit NPSstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. NPSstore.com.
Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers, all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, raising hay is the #1 way we use our share of water from the Colorado River in the West. Second, 5 people died, 7 were injured when a man went on a stabbing rampage in Rockford, Illinois. Third, fighting has intensified along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. 54 degrees, cloudy and windy right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, we're staying with the question of the life and legacy of former Senator Joe Lieberman, who passed away at the age of 82. He served in the United States Senate for over 2 decades. Of course, he was a vice presidential candidate and nominee for the Democrats in 2000 election. And we're going to dig into that just a little bit because there were some moments in that whole process that I think revealed much about who Joe Lieberman is as a person of integrity, as a true leader in every sense of the word. And you could disagree with Senator Lieberman on a host of policy issues, to be sure. But I don't think I ever found anyone who questioned where he was functioning from in terms of character, integrity, and really getting to the right thing, what's best for the country, what's best for the people that you're trying to serve. So I want to go back to some of these conversations. And again, much of this audio has never been aired before. These are things that we captured in different interviews with Senator Lieberman over the last few years. And I want to go to one now where he talked about what has become one of my favorite lessons. I call it the Joe Lieberman principle. And the principle is one that he learned from another political figure early in his career. And it's the principle of the integrity of compromise. Take a listen.
I tell that story about the integrity of compromise of the people who adopted the Constitution. I said, if they could do it in the Constitution, which created this very Congress in which we are privileged to serve, can't we get together and compromise on this big problem that America has now? Look, our politics in America over history has been spirited. You go back to the earlier campaigns, certainly after Washington, because he was such a hero. They were feisty, and there was a lot of name-calling going back and forth. But generally speaking, over our history, after the elections, people found a way to get together in the center, and particularly when there was a real national challenge or crisis. And we've lost that now, and it's really hurting our country, and we have to figure out, it's not only hurting our country because of the impact of leaders, elected leaders in this case, it's dividing our country. And that's why I spent so much time trying to what I call bring people back to the centrist solutions. Being a centrist is not the same as being a moderate. You can be a liberal, a conservative, Republican, Democrat, or a moderate, but the key thing is, are you willing to come to the center when you have a disagreement, talk about it with mutual respect, think about compromises in the national interest, and then pass it and get something done for the country.
That's such a crucial principle that's so lacking today. To be a centrist, again, not to be a moderate, not to be a squish, not to be a sellout, as it's often framed these days by those on the far left and the far right, but a centrist in terms of coming together to get a solution and to do what is in the best interest of the country. Senator Lieberman often described and shared with me that he really viewed the Senate as a network of trust. It has to be a network of trust among colleagues. Take a listen.
You should think of the Senate as 100 people going to work in the same place every day. And just like every factory or office or hospital or church or wherever, your ability to get things done depends on whether the other 99 people trust you or like you because you're a good person to them, you're civil to them. You know, language is used on cable news today that if I had used it in my home, my dad would have slapped me across the face. He did a couple of times. And yet it's out there in the public square, and then politicians begin to think, oh, wait, this is where America is now, this is where my voters is. So it's okay if I attack my opponent personally without limitation, and it's okay if I use just the worst kind of language in public. It has an effect, and I wish we could find a way to put some of that back in the box and go back to the days when we treated each other civilly, because you got to trust the person across the table.
So you have to have that kind of trust, and you can't have that kind of trust. You can't build that kind of trust if you're shouting pejoratives back and forth at each other all day long. And so many now think that is what the voters want. And that's a we the people issue. If we're validating it, if we're rewarding it, we're going to get more of it. Now, part of what always caused me to admire Senator Lieberman was his description of what took place in the 2000 election, a contested election, a closely fought election. And, of course, it came down to hanging chads and some votes in the state of Florida, ultimately ending up at the Supreme Court. When I sat with Senator Lieberman in his office in New York, he talked about the decision that he and Al Gore made as running mates and the principle of honoring the continuity of the American system of government, first, last, and always.
Look, I went through that myself in 2000, and the ultimate decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in Bush v. Gore, Al Gore and I thought was profoundly wrong. And yet, and I give Al Gore the most credit, because some people were arguing, well, the Supreme Court decision really allows us to go back to the Florida Supreme Court and appeal. And it was mid-December 2000, and Al Gore, late at night, because the decision came down late, decided we have to end it now. It's just totally unfair, but for the good of the country, because we're just weeks away from Inauguration Day, and we can't jeopardize the continuity of the American government. Because this system that the founders created in the Constitution has worked and has held us together through the toughest of times. And it doesn't require that much from each of us, including people in power. But one of the things it requires is to respect the courts that decide the law in our country.
So the senator went on to talk about that is such a stunning and stirring thing to me, that they actually felt, both Al Gore and Joe Lieberman as running mates, felt like they had more to battle. They had more of a case to make. They still thought that they had won that election of 2000. And yet, together they decided, for the good of the country and the continuity of the government, we'll concede. Pretty extraordinary, considering where we've been since the year 2000 and where we are today in 2024. I want to round out this segment of the program with Senator Lieberman by going back in history to something that Senator Lieberman loved to reference and referenced often in terms of what it was going to take to keep the republic.
So I think the most important thing is for people across the country to appreciate how fortunate, really blessed we are to live in a country that's been guided by this document, the American Constitution, that created our government, enshrined our liberties, created this land of extraordinary freedom and opportunity. But to understand that it just doesn't go on forever unless we uphold it in our time. And we're not doing a good job at that. You remember the famous moment outside the Constitutional Convention when it was over, when Franklin came out and the lady in the crowd shouted, "Dr. Franklin, what do we have, a republic or a monarchy?" And his answer was, paraphrasing, "A republic if we can keep it." So I would say we're blessed to live in a true constitutional democracy. And the question is whether we, our generation, and the ones that follow, can keep it.
Will we keep it? That is the question, and it takes leadership to keep it. We were talking earlier in the day about what it would be like if we had an army of Senator Liebermans in the Senate today. And I think it wouldn't take 100. You wouldn't have to have them all. I think if you had 10 Senator Liebermans in the Senate, it would absolutely transform the institution. And I think it would change the House in the process as well, because that's what happens when you get to character, when you get to principle, when you get to integrity and the integrity of compromise. Again, it's about coming to the center to get a solution that's in the best interest of the country, not what is in your best interest politically. We're going to come back at 2:50 and round out our conversations with the former senator who passed away yesterday at the age of 82. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Governor Spencer Cox says bills passed in the past legislative session will make a difference for affordable housing in Utah. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
The governor is praising lawmakers for their work to pass bills related to housing. One in particular he's excited about will give $300 million for low-interest loans to developers, but they'll have strict rules to build affordable housing with the money. This comes after the governor said at the start of the session that housing prices are the single greatest threat to the state.
Governor Cox held a ceremonial signing today on a number of housing-related bills. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Fighting has intensified along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Hezbollah has launched more than 100 rockets and drones there. Israeli forces struck back with raids deep inside Lebanon. There have been civilian casualties on both sides. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 106 points right now. The Nasdaq is up, but just 7 points. And our KSL weather, looks like we'll see more snow and rain this afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Spring is in the air, but so are airborne allergens like tree pollen, grass, mold, and ragweed. If spring allergies keep you trapped inside, then you need Navage Nasal Care to keep you breathing clearly and enjoying all the beauties of spring. Navage helps clear nasal passages that are often clogged because of seasonal allergies. Navage gently flushes a pure, refreshing saline solution through your nasal passages to clear out congestion, sucking out that springtime pollen and other irritants trapped in your nose. Navage springs into action quickly, helping you breathe more clearly in just 30 seconds. And you don't need a never-ending cycle of decongestants that can leave you feeling drowsy. Navage is the fast and easy drug-free allergy solution that helps you breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier. Get Navage today so you can get outdoors and enjoy your favorite springtime activities. Navage is available online at Navage.com or in stores at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, and Target. Navage, Navage. Breathe easy.
When you crash your car, you get it fixed. When your computer crashes, you get a new one. But what will you do if you've been saving in a 401k or an IRA and the market crashes? If you're in your 30s or 40s, you'll be just fine. But if you're in or near retirement, you could be in trouble. Mike Stevens and his team at Capital Wealth Advisors are here to help. They can run a risk analysis to see if you're too heavily invested in the market. Don't let the ups and downs of Wall Street control you or your retirement dreams. Call 801-210-5500 today to schedule your risk analysis with Mike Stevens and the team at Capital Wealth Advisors. That's 801-210-5500. Crashes happen. Question is, are you ready? Capital Wealth Advisors, 801-210-5500. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a rollover crash where the vehicle caught fire. It was fully engulfed. A lot of black smoke. It's on the transition ramp from eastbound SR 201 to go to northbound I-15. That's approximately 2100 south to 1300 south. And we are seeing backups both eastbound on the 201, on those ramps, and on northbound I-15. Springs is in the air with Park City Gallery Association's Gallery Stroll this Friday, 6 to 9. Freshen up walls and liven up your halls with budding art in full bloom. Visit ParkCityGalleryAssociation.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
At our KSL weather, a cold front moving in this afternoon brings valley rain and mountain snow with it. Then more rain moves in ahead of Easter weekend. And right now we're at 46 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
You know, one of the things that I love about doing this job is the opportunity to learn every day from a wide range of individuals and organizations, people who are out there making a difference, people who are teaching powerful principles that are transformative in nature. If you're just joining us, we spent the first two segments of the program talking about the life and legacy and many of the lessons I learned from former Senator Joe Lieberman, who passed away yesterday after an extraordinary life. We'll come back to some of the lessons I learned and the conversations I had with Joe Lieberman coming up at 2:50, so stick around for that. Also had, in a very interesting way today, popped up in one of my emails, goes back to Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who passed away a few years ago. It was sort of a James Elroy Flecker day today for me, that James Elroy Flecker wrote that since I can never see your face or shake you by the hand, I send my soul through time and space to greet you. You will understand. And I love the people of history, some that I've never met, some that I've spoken to, but always learning. And those principles do travel across time and space. And one of the things that we have looked at a lot on this program of late is what's going on in society. Politics is downstream from all of it. But it's interesting to look at societies, what causes them to thrive and succeed, and what is it that causes them to unravel and collapse. And so Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks several years ago was talking about Rebecca Costa's theory of the collapse of civilizations. And there's some great audio around this from the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. And so I want to go to that today, starting with this idea from Rebecca Costa about the collapse of civilization, using the Mayans as an example to talk about how even really big, successful societies can unravel pretty fast.
In her recent The Watchman's Rattle, subtitled Thinking Our Way Out of Extinction, Rebecca Costa delivers a fascinating account of how civilizations die. Their problems become too complex. Societies reach what she calls a cognitive threshold. They simply can't chart a path from the present to the future. The example she gives is of the Mayans. For a period of 3,500 years between 2600 BCE and 900 CE, they developed an extraordinary civilization spreading over what today is Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Belize, with an estimated population in those days of 15 million people. Not only were they master potters, weavers, architects, and farmers, they developed an intricate cylindrical calendar system with celestial charts to track the movements of the stars and predict weather patterns. They had their own unique form of writing, as well as an advanced mathematical system. Most impressively, they developed a water supply infrastructure involving a complex network of reservoirs, canals, dams, and levées. Then suddenly, for reasons we don't still fully understand, the entire system collapsed. Sometime between the middle of the 8th and 9th century, the majority of the Mayan people simply disappeared. There have been many theories as to why it happened. It may have been prolonged drought, overpopulation, internecine wars, a devastating epidemic, food shortages, or a combination of these and other factors. One way or another, having survived for 35 centuries, Mayan civilization failed and became extinct.
So the civilization became extinct. This amazing Mayan empire suddenly collapsed. And as Rabbi Sachs pointed out, often these societies collapse because things became too complex. So I want you to listen really closely as he explains what happened most likely to the Mayans, as well as some of the things that we ought to be thinking about today because of where we are today in our society.
Rebecca Costa's argument is that whatever the causes of the Mayan collapse, it, like the fall of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Khmer Empire of 13th century Cambodia, happened because problems just became too many and complicated for people of that time and place to solve. There was cognitive overload, a kind of collective burnout, and systems broke down. It can happen to any civilization. It may, she says, be happening to ours. The first sign of breakdown is gridlock. Instead of dealing with what everyone can see are major problems, people continue as usual and simply pass on their problems to the next generation. The second sign is a retreat into the irrational. Since people can no longer cope with the facts, they take refuge in religious consolations. The Mayans took to offering sacrifices on a major scale. Archaeologists have uncovered gruesome evidence of human sacrifice on a really vast scale. It seems that unable to cope with their problems rationally, the Mayans focused on placating the gods by manically making offerings to them.
All right, so I want to break this down in terms of where we are today. Again, this was some of the things attributed to the fall of the Mayan Empire, as great as that was, as advanced as that was. And it's that they just had too many problems, and they became very complex. They became more and more complex. And so the traits that you see before the collapse of a civilization or a society is gridlock. Heard that somewhere before. Gridlock happens, and people start to just simply ignore the problems or just leave it to the next generation to solve. I can think of about $34 trillion that we're passing on in a complex problem to the next generation because we have gridlock. We're not willing to do it. The irrationality that Lord Sachs pointed out, that people become so irrational. Everything's a conspiracy theory. Everyone's out to get you. It's a grievance, populist approach to dealing with the problems. It's completely irrational. And then finally, things start to become fractured. People go into tribes, into groups. It's othering. It's us and them, and who's out to get us, and who do we have to save ourselves from. And I think in describing the pre-fall of the Mayans, I think in many ways, Rabbi Sachs was really pointing out where we are today. Now, this is not to be the doom and gloom society here on Inside Sources. We don't do that because we're always looking at what's the solution? What's the path out of this? How do we move forward in a positive way? And as always, Rabbi Sachs delivered things that can make a difference. And he actually pointed to the Jews and to Judaism and how they survived through all kinds of different things and what they did to avoid the gridlock, the becoming completely irrational, and the fracturing of society. And the solutions are actually pretty simple. They almost sound too simplistic. But it has a lot to do with slowing down. It comes back to a lot of engaging. One of the things that they pointed out was this idea of service, of charity, of making a difference for your neighbor, of helping somebody in need, making that kind of sacrifice. He talked about the simple act of prayer, of just pausing and reflecting and to looking to a higher power, whatever that is. And then he talked about the power of fellowship, of recognizing that we're all fellow travelers on planet Earth, and that we should be in fellowship. We should link arms and move forward together to solve the big issues of the day, to solve the big challenges of the day. So it was nice reflection for me and a chance to go back to some of those interactions we had with Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs before he passed away in the UK a few years ago. And I think those lessons of history, we've been talking a lot with former Utah Governor Mike Leavitt, and he's been talking about past being prologue. I think we're seeing that, not only in things like infrastructure and the Olympic Games and technology as it relates to the state of Utah, and we are seeing all of those things repeat, but we're also seeing all of these other things that Rabbi Sachs pointed out, past is prologue, that before the fall of big societies, before the collapse of big countries, it is that gridlock becoming irrational and becoming very tribal and very fractured. But the solutions are pretty easy. So go out and make a difference today. Help your neighbor in need, and that'll help us get to the right space and prevent the collapse. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit npsstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. npsstore.com.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure they'll get you your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt!
Switch to Jackson Hewitt and we'll beat what you paid last year, even if you filed online. Ain't nothing to it. Switch to Jackson Hewitt and pay less for tax prep, guaranteed. Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com.
Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
Hey, have you saved more than $200,000 in an IRA or 401k? You may not realize it now, but you've got a big problem on your hands. And that problem is taxes. Because if you don't take advantage of some tax planning strategies now, Uncle Sam could take a big chunk of your hard-earned retirement savings. Learn how you could reduce the taxes on your IRA and 401k with a free retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions. If you've saved more than $200,000, schedule your free tax strategy session now by calling 801-896-9622. Discover the tax planning strategies that could dramatically reduce your taxes in retirement. Call 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, do it now. Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Governor Cox signed bills today meant to provide more affordable housing in Utah. Second, would the plan to finance a Major League Baseball stadium with property taxes take money away from school kids? One expert says no. And third, while the focus has been on the ongoing war in Gaza, fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has intensified along Israel's northern border. 46 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. If you're just joining us, we're really doing a look back at some extraordinary individuals who have taught powerful principles, transformative principles. We talked about former Senator Joe Lieberman, who passed away yesterday, and some of the conversations I had with him about principle, the integrity of compromise, doing what's in the best interest of the country. We went to an interview with Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs from the UK, who passed away a few years ago, one of the great moral voices of our time. And looking at some of those trends in terms of how and what happens before a great nation or a great society collapses, and gridlock and the loss of rational thinking and the tribalism that sets in. And now we're going to go to the art of being wrong from a very unique source. Yesterday, we lost another one of the great minds and people of history, one in psychology and economics, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. And we're going to get into his story. And this came to our attention, a fantastic piece in The Atlantic. Daniel Engberg, senior editor at The Atlantic. And Daniel joins us on the line. And we actually talked about this on the show just a couple of days ago. The power of being willing to consider that you just might be wrong goes a long way. But Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Boyd.
And let's dive right into this. Here you have someone who was a Nobel laureate and really got into this whole idea that, hey, I was wrong. Give us the backstory.
Yeah, I mean, really a special kind of scientist, a Nobel laureate who would routinely give lectures about how his Nobel Prize winning work was wrong. Really someone who, as far as I could tell, really kind of relished changing his mind, kind of as I see it, a heroic flip-flopper in a way.
I love that. I love the way you described it in the piece. Everyone just needs to go read this today. This changed my day. and grateful to our producer Izzy for spotting this one for us. And she said she has the art of being wrong right, but not nearly as right as I have it wrong, I think. But this whole idea that you have, it seems today we have so many scientists and experts who will never, ever, ever consider the possibility that they might be wrong. And here, he actually flourished in that space. Give us some of the lessons of that.
Well, it's sort of how his whole career got started. One of his very early papers from 1971 was based on his observation that even he, a trained psychologist, well-versed in statistical methods, would often, deceive himself and be confused by results that came from experiments with small sample sizes or non-representative samples. And so he and his colleague, Amos Tversky, wrote this paper in 1971 called Belief in the Law of Small Numbers that was kind of calling out their colleagues for these mistakes that, that Kahneman had observed in himself, and just, pointing this out and showing how the field could be improved, how research could be more rigorous. And then he goes on to, with that same colleague, do these just incredible experiments, studies showing a host of cognitive biases and heuristics that really would form the basis of the field of behavioral economics. So it's from the start, he was kind of outlining in incredible detail and with extraordinary insight all of these ways that rational people can sort of get tricked. And what I thought was so striking about his story was that, again, this started with his own observations of his own mistakes, and he continued to make those mistakes throughout his career and would always call them out, own up to them, and correct himself, and seemed to, as I said, sort of take delight in changing his mind. Like he said, I saw him a few times say he likes being wrong because it means he used to think something and now he thinks something different. And so he's kind of making progress.
Progress, that's everything. I love the way you frame this in the piece. You said his careful, doubting mode of doing science was heroic. He got everything wrong, and yet somehow he was always right. And it's that mode of doubting, it's that mode of being wrong, of questioning, that really is heroic. I know you had the chance to interview him personally. Just give us a little insight into that interaction.
Well, actually, what was so funny about it was he was interviewing me. I was applying to graduate school, and as part of the application process, I met with him. He was a member of the faculty, and he was doing the interview. And yet, he had also demonstrated earlier in his career that standard interviews of this type have no value whatsoever. In fact, I think, as he put it, they lower the accuracy of the selection process. So I went into this situation that was, fundamentally something I'm sure he found absurd. And it was a bizarre conversation. He was extremely intelligent and sweet and a weird person. I mean, I didn't know what to make of him. And he started spinning out this, odd idea that he was going to measure how happy people were by scanning their brains and then counting up, totaling up the happiness level in each person in different situations and maximizing happiness. I mean, it was just this utopian sounding, bizarre thing that it seemed to me would never work. And I didn't know what to make of it. And then later, as I came to understand more about Kahneman and his career and everything he did, I just thought, oh, well, he had an idea. It was probably wrong, like many other ideas he had. But what was so brilliant about him was he would just sort of spin out these ideas, often in conversation. He was he talked through his ideas. And then he would just, move on as soon as it turned out that they were incorrect or there was some better thing to be doing. And so he actually did some really fascinating research in the years that followed on the psychology of happiness. The thing he was telling me about that day in the office was not one of them. But so I sort of got to see it in live in action in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's such a powerful premise, and I think we need a lot more of it in a lot of different places. I think the halls of Congress would be a great place to start. And actually, there's been a few who have suggested that is actually one of the prerequisites of maintaining a constitutional republic is holding the notion that you just might be wrong and having that radical curiosity. Give us one last kind of takeaway. We always try to get to the therefore what moment of all of this. Just in our last minute, give us kind of your takeaway. What do you hope people think different or do different as a result of this piece?
Well, Boyd, I think you really just said it right there. You know, Kahneman was very interested in the policy implications of everything he was doing. When he was studying the psychology of happiness, like he said to me in that interview, he wanted to figure out ways to make people happier. When he was figuring out how people go wrong, the cognitive biases, he wanted to figure out ways to ameliorate those biases, new, better ways to do job interviews. So he's always had this almost utopian bent. We can use science to make the world better in all of these specific ways. At the same time, he was an incredible avowed pessimist, constantly talked about how pessimistic he was. I think he was kind of, depressive even. And probably part of that comes from seeing firsthand how hard it is to make the science work, to apply the science, to come up with interventions that actually do make the world a better place. And in the end, I don't think that, the policies that came out of his work are his greatest legacy. I think his greatest legacy is modeling through his brilliance and through his career, this ability to, go where the evidence takes him, to not be so devoted to his own ideas that he isn't willing to, shift his frame of mind in an instant. Yeah. And I think if we could apply that policy, that would be incredible.
Fantastic. This is a brilliant piece. Changed my day. Daniel Engberg is the senior editor at The Atlantic. Go check out that piece at theatlantic.com today. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. You really helped us with the James Elroy Flecker moment of, because I can never see you by the face and never greet you by the hand, I send my soul through time and space to greet you. You will understand, and it makes a difference. Thanks for sharing that principle with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, we'll be back with hour number 2 of Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour: would giving tax money to build a Major League Baseball stadium take money away from students in the Salt Lake City School District? That's been argued, but one expert says it's not necessarily so.
The current level of property tax continues to go to the school district. They don't lose out on what they're currently getting. They will not benefit from the development that's paid for by the development of the Major League Baseball stadium.
Jason Gardner with the Utah State Tax Commission says the development would likely not occur, though, without a tax incentive, and he also believes the stadium would attract other businesses to the area. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: President Biden invited an old pal to join him aboard Air Force One for a trip to New York City. Former President Obama is on the guest list for a campaign fundraiser tonight at Radio City Music Hall. Stephen Colbert is also among the luminaries, expected to help raise $25 million for the president's campaign. Your money at this moment: the Dow Jones average up on the day 46 points, but the NASDAQ is down 20. And our KSL weather: we've got some wet weather today and more coming for the weekend. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Spring is a great time to elevate the look of your home and landscape by adding beautiful flowers to the yard and patio. And pros and hobbyists alike know that the best flowers are grown by Olson's Greenhouse, right here in the mountain valleys of Utah. This is Brian with Olson's Greenhouse, and my family has been growing flowers with love and care for over 80 years. That's 4 generations of a local, family-run Utah business. So whether you're looking to add a pop of color to the back patio or a beautiful flower bed to the front landscape, flowers from Olson's Greenhouse are the perfect finishing touch to make your yard a joy to relax in. Stop by OGG.com or find us on Instagram at Olson's Greenhouse Gardens, where you'll find inspiring photos to get you going on your flower gardening journey. You can also find a local retailer carrying plants from Olson's Greenhouse. That's OGG.com for Olson's Greenhouse Gardens, where you can dream big, dream bold, and dream in color with beautiful plants and flowers from Olson's Greenhouse.
Okay, let's go. Top row. Tell me what you see on the eye chart.
EYECARE?
Good. Next row.
AM America? iCareAmerica.org?
Yes, Eye Care America is a program that helps seniors 65 and older who haven't had a medical eye exam in 3 or more years. They also help those with an increased risk for glaucoma. And the appointment is often free or at no out-of-pocket cost. There are thousands of volunteer ophthalmologists throughout the United States, which means there's probably a participating doctor right where you live. To protect your eyes, early detection is key. So don't wait. It's easy to see if you qualify. Go to iCareAmerica.org today. That's EYECareAmerica.org.
Devotion to country, service to Utah. Brent Orrin Hatch had a front row seat, watching his father serve our state faithfully in the Senate. A constitutional conservative and lifelong Republican, Brent Orrin Hatch is a champion for the rule of law. He's running for Senate to stop this lawless president from destroying our country from within. Hatch will fight to secure the border once and for all and take on Mexican drug cartels to halt the flow of deadly fentanyl. Brent Orrin Hatch knows the national debt is just as big a threat to national security. Hatch won't rest until the budget's balanced and won't cave to the big spenders in both parties. Pro-life, deeply committed to religious liberty, rock-solid Utah conservative. Brent Orrin Hatch for Senate. Paid for by Conservative Outsider PAC, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.copac.us.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Kind of a mess in the heart of the valley. We had a rollover crash on the collector ramp from eastbound SR 201 to go to I-15. It rolled, caught fire, and now we have a heavy police presence because we may be looking at a possible criminal situation in the area. Right now, that ramp is closed to traffic, and we'll keep you posted as to when this is going to reopen. But also, 3rd West in the area has been blocked off westbound lanes towards I-15 due to the heavy traffic presence in the area. And once this ramp is reopened and cleaned up, we'll let you know. But you can expect delays both north and southbound I-15. On the northbound side, they go from about 3,500 south. Southbound delays go from 9th South to the 201 junction. Plan your special evening out in one of Salt Lake's most unique dining, 5 Alls in Foothill. 5 courses, 5-star service and dining. 5alls.com. 5alls.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, cold front moving in this afternoon, bringing valley rain and mountain snow. More rain moves in ahead of Easter weekend. Right now, 48 degrees with showers. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, Congress did succeed in funding the government before they headed for the exits and the jet fumes at Reagan International Airport before they took off for the Easter recess. But, of course, there's a lot of work that is left undone, particularly in an election year. And one of the big priorities and one of the big issues that many, not just here in the United States, but around the world are looking at and waiting for are the aid packages that include humanitarian support for allies, Ukraine funding in particular, along with Israel and Taiwan. All of that seems to be forever stuck in the House in limbo. And so as we look at the headline of what gets stuck there and, of course, the challenges that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has been facing, it might be time to get underneath the headline to see if maybe the Democrats will help him keep that speakership. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we always look at the headlines of the battles between the Democrats and the Republicans in a very narrow majority in the House. Of course, there's always threats, and a new threat from Marjorie Taylor Greene for Speaker Johnson to vacate the chair. But underneath that, there's an interesting possibility swirling around the Democrats actually helping Speaker Johnson to maintain the gavel and keep the job. Mike Lillis, of course, covers Congress for The Hill, and he and Michael Snell had a great piece in The Hill talking about how Democrats might see that rescuing of the speakership and Ukraine being interconnected. And Mike, welcome back to the show.
Boyd, good afternoon. I'm glad to be with you.
So give us a little sense of what you heard as they were heading for the exits there. Obviously, some new rumblings in the jungle when it comes to vacating the chair with Marjorie Taylor Greene filing a petition, not pulling the trigger on it, sort of a shot across the bow at Speaker Johnson. How are Democrats looking at this, particularly as it relates to that aid package that includes help for Ukraine?
That's right. You know, Mike Johnson here has a Ukraine problem. He says he wants aid, but there is a huge chunk of his conference that doesn't want it. That thinks that the Congress should focus more internally on domestic problems, and this, of course, is kind of following the playbook of former President Trump, who is also opposing the Ukraine package and has made that clear and is influencing a lot of those conservatives that Mike Johnson is trying to bring along. So, you know, into that void, I should say that has left Mike Johnson with very few options, you know, and none of them are good. There is a Senate bill. It was passed with the help of Mitch McConnell and 22 Senate Republicans. So there is a bipartisan package just sitting there waiting to come to the floor. But Johnson says he opposes it. He says there's no border language on there. And he would get really beat up politically, both by Trump and the conservatives in his caucus, if he brought that to the floor. So he says he's going to try to bring something up in the House that would be an alternative, send it back to the Senate. But no one really thinks that can pass the House, and it certainly wouldn't pass the Senate. So if your goal is to get Ukraine aid, that's not the way to go about it. If he does put the Senate bill right on the floor, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you said she didn't pull the trigger on that motion to vacate. She would almost certainly do so right there. Yeah. And so this is where the Democrats see that opportunity. They're basically telling Mike Johnson, put that Senate bill on the floor. It's already got bipartisan support. It'll pass very easily with 300 votes, members of both parties. We send it to Biden's desk. It gets signed. And then when MTG pulls the trigger and brings that motion to vacate and tries to kick you out, we will vote and table that motion to vacate, and it will never get a vote on the floor, and you will remain in power through the rest of the Congress. So that's kind of their offer. They're doing it through the press. He's well aware of the offer. He's given no indication that he's ready to accept it. And, of course, being propped up by Democrats would make it very difficult for him to govern the rest of the year. The conservatives would be going crazy. But there's not a lot to do legislatively for the rest of the year anyway. So so he could survive through the year. You remember the chaos that happened when Kevin McCarthy was kicked out. There were 3 weeks when they couldn't bring anything to the floor.
Right.
And that was right after the terrorist attack in Israel, and then they couldn't respond to it. So they don't want to create another situation like that where they can't find a replacement for Johnson. So a lot of Republicans would go along with it, and it would only be a handful of Republicans who, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who would want to kick him out. So you wouldn't need that many Democrats. And we were talking to some folks who said there are plenty of Democrats who would rescue him if he brings that bill to the floor.
Yeah, and so I want to unpack a couple of components there as you laid those out. So one, what specifically the Democrats are looking at. Some of the folks that I've talked to have said, hey, we need a few more specifics in terms of what's in there and how that's going to play out. And then I want you to unpack a little bit for us the path forward in terms of how he would be able to govern and lead his conference with only a vote to spare. But as you said, there's not too much left on the agenda given it's election year. So kind of unpack that for us.
Sure. To your first question, the Democrats want the Senate bill. And the Senate bill is not just Ukraine, as you know. There's Israel aid in there. There's aid for Taiwan. There's humanitarian aid for Gaza and other hotspots around the globe. So it's a package deal. None of those pieces are terribly controversial by themselves. And so one of the things that Johnson has floated is picking them apart and voting on them separately. I don't know that that's a viable path. I don't know how the Senate would handle that. And then he's still demanding the border language, which certainly wouldn't pass in the Senate. So he's still at a dead end there. So the Democrats want all of those pieces, not just Ukraine. They want Israel, they want humanitarian, and they want the Taiwan stuff. So that is what they want. That's their rescue plan for Mike Johnson is contingent on all of those pieces, not just the Ukraine piece. So I think that's an important question that you just asked. In terms of what it means for Johnson going forward, any member, the rules changed at the beginning of the year that McCarthy conceded to, and it ended up being his downfall, was that any single member can bring a motion to vacate at any time. So that's what Green brought on last Friday as they were leaving town. And she can pull the trigger anytime she wants, and it'll force a vote on that. If that fails, they could do it every day, for the rest of Congress. They could really make life difficult for Mike Johnson, but there are not a lot of things that have to be passed for the rest of the year. If you consider Ukraine one of the must-pass things, and a lot of people do, that's kind of the biggest one. They're also coming back, and they have an April 19th deadline for FISA reauthorization, which is the government's domestic spying program, which is also a really, really tough issue for Johnson because the Republicans are split over that. Democrats are split over that too. That's just a tough issue for both parties. Yeah. So that's must pass. There are a couple things like that, but once you get beyond those, it's all campaign from there on out. They're not going to spend a lot of time here in Washington. They're going to be on the campaign trail. House is up for grabs. Senate is up for grabs. No one wants to be in Washington. And so he could skate for the rest of the year through the elections. And I should mention that nobody after November, no matter what happens in November, no matter who's going to control the House next year, very few people think that Mike Johnson would be the leader of the Republican Party because he's just angered too many people. Yeah. So he can get away. In other words, he can get away with having this as his legacy. We went after Putin. We didn't allow, Russia to take over Ukraine, our Democratic ally, and that'll go on my resume and in my obituary. And he keeps saying, I'm a Reagan Republican, and this is what I want. So, it's a really tough decision for him. He's clearly trying to decide a path that is the least politically damaging, but he doesn't have any good options.
Yeah, no good options there, but some fascinating things that are going to unfold in the next few weeks. Mike Lillis covers Congress for The Hill. Great piece at thehill.com. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Boyd. Anytime.
All right, and that's Mike Lillis, covers Congress for The Hill. And, man, talk about a complicated world that is Speaker Mike Johnson's world. No easy path, but some interesting allies, and it will be fascinating to see what he chooses. It will say a lot about what we talked about in hour number one in terms of leadership, character, integrity, and asking the question, what's the best thing for the country? We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Hey, when it comes to your health and wellness, you only have two options. You can make progress or you can make excuses. You cannot do both. I made excuses for a long, long time. I packed around an extra 37 pounds that I picked up mostly in Washington, D.C. And then finally, I decided to make progress. And I did it with SOTA weight loss. SOTA weight loss stands for state-of-the-art weight loss because it is state-of-the-art. It's based on science. I lost those 37 pounds in just 90 days. I'm over 2 years into maintenance, and I still feel great. I'm right where I want to be in terms of my health and wellness, and you can do the same. Thousands of people across the country are figuring out how to overcome the addictive parts of what we eat and why we eat it, and then they get focused with SOTA weight loss on getting the right nutrients to your body at the right time so that you can maximize your health and wellness. You've heard me say it before when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win, so start winning today. No excuses. Get going. You can check them out at sotaweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com.
After the collision,
law enforcement officers raced to stop traffic from going over the bridge.
This is a vessel that was about 100,000 tons.
The whole bridge just fell down. Everybody, the whole bridge just collapsed.
The search for answers.
Federal investigators are collecting evidence from the cargo ship.
We have a team here that is getting the recorders.
Our resolve is unshaken.
We're following the Baltimore Bridge collapse with updates, mornings and afternoons.
On KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
If you've been enjoying a little too much food, too many sweets, and too much liquid cheer over the holidays, then you've probably put a lot of stress on your liver. A great way to show your liver some love and to detox your system is simply adding Active Liver to your daily routine. Active Liver is an easy and effective way to keep your liver healthy and functioning properly all year long. You can find Active Liver at Amazon.com, or for a volume discount, go to NORDICUSA.com, or ask for Active Liver at your local CVS.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt, yeah!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure they'll get you your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt, yeah!
Switch to Jackson Hewitt and we'll beat what you paid last year, even if you filed online. Ain't nothing to it. Switch to Jackson Hewitt and pay less for tax prep, guaranteed. Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
In the history of the world, nobody has ever said, yay, we need a new roof. But when things aren't quite right up there, don't wait. Call IWC Roofing, the highest-rated roofing contractor in Utah. IWC has been in business since 1997, and they offer the best value pricing in Utah, along with the best warranty in the business. They're one of the few Owens Corning Platinum-certified roofers in the entire state. They have their own installers, no subcontractors crawling around on your roof. And at IWC Roofing, they'll send you pictures from up on the roof to show that you're getting exactly what you paid for. In most cases, they'll re-roof your home in one day. They'll clean up and pressure wash your driveway. IWC roofs more homes than any other company in Utah, so they can offer you a better price. And right now, an extra $1,500 off your new roof. Call IWC Roofing for a no-pressure quote, 801-232-5690. Call 801-232-5690 or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, now available anywhere you get your podcasts.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As the 2024 presidential election cycle rumbles, maybe undulates along, not fast enough for most of us, the former and the current president continue to play tag back and forth in the polls as it goes in those battleground states. Both parties are, of course, making this the most important election of our lifetime. A lot of back and forth in terms of fate of the free world and existential threats to our constitutional republic. And now we get to the strategy of what are we actually going to do about all of this? What are the two candidates, leading candidates for both the Democrats and the Republicans doing? And interesting, current occupant of the White House, President Joe Biden, is actually turning to predecessors for some campaign advice and support. The former President, Obama, has been engaged, I think, in a number of different ways, and we want to see how that's playing out and the impact that it's having. Someone who has been covering that for News Nation's Kelly Meyer, of course. Kelly's the Washington correspondent for News Nation in the D.C. Bureau. And Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So give us a little bit of sense, as you've been watching this, it appears that former President Obama's presence has been a little more front and center lately in the White House.
Yeah, definitely. We've been talking with our sources here, and sources familiar have been saying that he is getting more involved. He's been talking with aides here at the White House and giving some advice and kind of communicating just how much is at stake here, and trying to invest his energy and time into helping his former running mate get reelected. So we're hearing from the Biden campaign, the Biden-Harris campaign, that he's going to be more involved in fundraising events out there on the campaign trail. He's already recorded digital ads with President Biden by his side, and they have more that they're going to release here very soon. And he's also helped with just grassroots fundraising, and just his outreach and his following really helps in getting the word out for his former running mate and friend and colleague that he still comes here and talks with. We know that he was here at the White House just last week, and they said it was a fun conversation. They were joking around. They also talked about policy, but as well as 2024 and the road ahead.
Yeah, and so I want to break into a couple of different components there. One, let's talk about the fundraising side. Of course, the former president was a prolific fundraiser. For sure, we know there is an event coming up that will headline both former President Obama and former President Clinton, along with Joe Biden. Give us a sense of what that's about and how they are going to continue to position that.
Yeah, and we know that they did a similar Meet the President event back in December, where I think they raised somewhere around $3 million, and that was just Biden and Obama. Now they're going to add in Bill Clinton, so the three of them will be there. The main event of the night is this armchair conversation moderated by Stephen Colbert, where the three of them will be there on stage. And actually, just here at the White House not too long ago, the White House press secretary talked about the historic nature of the event as much as she could without going into the campaign side, because, of course, she can't talk about that from here at the White House podium. But she talked about the historic nature of this event, having those three presidents on stage. And it'll be a big star-studded event. There's going to be Mindy Kaling, Lizzo, Queen Latifah, several high-profile guests from musicians to comedians. But definitely the headline there is the three presidents coming out and just how much money they're going to raise. I think it's about $4 million so far. That's going to be tomorrow night in New York City at Radio City Music Hall. That will be a big one, to be sure. And, bringing in all the people and players for that one. And it is always, I always feel for Karine Jean-Pierre that she has to navigate the Hatch Act on some of these things. Exactly. She always makes sure to say that.
Yeah, exactly. It's become standard issue in all of her press conferences. Before she says something that may be more on the political side, she always gets that qualifier in there. I want to get a sense from you as well. Because I think this is an important one. You often find this where you have this tug and pull between the governing apparatus and the campaign apparatus. And obviously with the former President Obama weighing in a lot more, being on the phone a lot more, how is that playing inside of the administration? Sometimes, again, that can be a little bristly at times.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just talking with our sources here, the fact that he's been having conversations, we know, with Chief of Staff Jeff Zients. He's talking with Jen O'Malley Dillon, advisors here, kind of giving them advice and talking about 2024 strategy. So it definitely is somewhat blurring those lines between this current administration and the jump they're still doing here in the White House, but then what they're trying to do. And I think for the former president, Obama, he is trying to say that, if we want to continue on this progress, we have to keep him in office for another 4 years. So he's standing behind him and trying to do whatever he can to get him reelected, basically saying that the rematch between Trump and Biden might not be as easy as it was last time, and just giving him a warning that it might be a bit more difficult this time around.
Yeah, no question about that. And is there any concern there inside the White House, again, kind of on the administrative side, in terms of the former president who is so dynamic, who is so good on the stage and on the stump, that he starts to outshine his former vice president, and that becomes both the age issue getting exacerbated a little bit, or just the brilliance of the Obama campaign ability versus the current president?
Yeah, there's definitely, I'm sure that concern there. He's such a dynamic politician and was so loved by many in the Democratic Party when he was president. And when he comes back out, he has this kind of celebrity star-studded appeal to him. So there is that question of whether he will outshine his former running mate. But I think for the White House or the campaign, they just enjoy having them both together and kind of are using that, attention that Obama gets to help propel Biden's message. So kind of using some of his shine and relying on some of it to help Biden get ahead, especially maybe with some younger voters.
Yeah. Anything else you're keeping your eye on as it relates to this portion of the strategy? And this this is always the interesting season of the campaign. You've kind of got past the headache of primary season. Which, of course, President Biden did not have a whole lot of pushback on. But now it's kind of this little lull season. Anything you're keeping your eye on before we get to the fall and the big push in the general?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting you asked because I'm actually just hearing that former President Trump is now planning to go to New York City tomorrow for the wake for that New York police officer that had passed away. And I think that really does set up another interesting split-screen moment. Trump and Biden continue to be in the same place at the same time for somewhat dueling events for different reasons. But now that, that casts a different split screen in the sense, here's former President Trump going to this wake, and then here's President Joe Biden fundraising with, celebrities on stage. So it'll be an interesting split screen to watch tomorrow and how this unfolds.
Yeah, and I think that is, you may have just defined what is left of the 2024 campaign. It is going to be split screen from here to the first Tuesday in November. I think
exactly.
That's going to play it all out. Well, fantastic. Kelly Meyer, awesome as always, Washington correspondent in News Nation's Washington, D.C. Bureau. Kelly, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. When we come back, Emma Camp's going to join us from Reason. We're going to talk about some of the challenges inside the free application for federal student aid and how that's leaving some left out. We'll talk about that coming up next. Stick around. More Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. We have breaking news at this hour. A car driven by a suspect in a possible carjacking rolled over and caught fire on I-15 near 21st South this afternoon. Police say a passenger in the car is in custody, but the suspect left the scene. The incident shut down the ramp while the case is being investigated by West Valley Police and the Highway Patrol. A man from Brighton now facing criminal charges for confronting a snowboarder with a shotgun. The snowboarder did mistakenly come onto his property back in February. The snowboarder was riding at Brighton when he went into the backcountry and rode onto Keith Stebbings' property. Stebbings has now been charged with aggravated assault and making a threat of violence. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Lots of visitors showing up in southern Indiana for the solar eclipse, even though it's still more than a week away. Melissa Capps is a business owner in Seymour, Indiana, which will be right in the path of totality.
The schools are closing, the factories are shutting down. There's holidays. I mean, it's a holiday. It's on their calendar from last year. We've been planning this for a year now.
The town's emergency response and transportation officials say they'll be on alert, too, as the expected crowds arrive. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today up 47 points. It's the NASDAQ that was down 20 points. On the way, we'll be looking at traffic and weather with looks like rain and more snow happening in Salt Lake this afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Hey, have you saved more than $200,000 in an IRA or 401k? You may not realize it now, but you've got a big problem on your hands. And that problem is taxes. Because if you don't take advantage of some tax planning strategies now, Uncle Sam could take a big chunk of your hard-earned retirement savings. Learn how you could reduce the taxes on your IRA and 401k with a free retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions. If you've saved more than $200,000, schedule your free tax strategy session now by calling 801-896-9622. Discover the tax planning strategies that could dramatically reduce your taxes in retirement. Call 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Restrictions are in place for Big and Little Cottonwood canyons with more snowfall coming down. And we also have the collector ramp closed due to this earlier rollover crash vehicle fire. This is the ramp from eastbound SR 201 to northbound I-15 at about 1300 South. Replenish Landscape provides the finest compost and landscape products for flower and vegetable gardens. Start your season right with Replenish. Visit replenishcompost.com. Replenish, it's good stuff. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, a cold front moving in this afternoon, bringing valley rain and mountain snow. More rain will move in ahead of Easter weekend. And right now, we're at 45 degrees. We have some rain downtown. I'm Dan Bonas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, despite some of the indicators in terms of improvement in the economy, many Americans are still just feeling the effects of a very turbulent economy and some messaging maybe coming out of the administration that isn't congruent with what they're talking about around their kitchen table. And in particular, that's hitting things like college education costs. People are feeling the pinch and the stress of all of that. Of course, an important component for many families here is the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, is it's affectionately called. And as always, we want to look at what's going right, what's going wrong, what needs to be done better, and how's it actually impacting real people, real students in this case. Emma Kemp is joining us, and she is the assistant editor at Reason Magazine, and Reason.com. And a great piece, as always, Emma, talking about another glitch in the system and the impact on some of the financial aid for a big number of students. Give us the rundown.
Okay, so to start off with what's happening with the FAFSA, the Education Department has really bungled it this year. So in 2020, Congress passed a law that required the FAFSA to be streamlined, to make it a simpler form to fill out. That sounds like a great idea, right? Well, the Education Department seems to have had a hard time doing this. So they had a really long delay in getting the FAFSA form out. Normally it comes out in October. This year it didn't come out until New Year's Eve, and they didn't extend that deadline for families. And almost immediately when students and families started filling it out, they started facing these really infuriating technical glitches. You know, people were having a hard time logging in, they were getting locked out, the form was having all of these kind of nonsensical technical bugs, and a lot of them were affecting people really long term. So just until, a couple weeks ago, If you have a parent without a social security number, which is mostly students who have an undocumented parent, you couldn't fill out the form at all. And just recently, the Education Department announced that they miscalculated the estimated family contributions for 200,000 students who had reported their own financial assets, things like cash savings or investments. And this is really putting people's college decisions at risk, right? The FAFSA form is required if you want to get federal grants and loans, and it's required by the vast majority of colleges if you want to get financial aid.
Yeah, and so let's dig into some of those components. So one, not surprising, things don't tend to run on time when they're making those kinds of changes in government programs or systems or processes. And so, but it's stunning to me that they didn't get this done, not in the fall, but it went all the way to New Year's Eve, but there was no change in the deadline. That had to be infuriating for a lot of folks.
Oh, yes, for sure. I'm sure there's going to be many families who aren't able to get the form in on time, especially families that have other issues that have kept them from being able to fill out the form until recently.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those downstream impacts as it relates. You mentioned it briefly, but I want you to unpack that for us a little bit in terms of the requirements for those who want to get some of that federal aid or federal grants, having to really suspend or put off making some of those crucial decisions.
Yeah, this is really going to throw a lot of people's plans up in the air. This form is absolutely required, like you said, if you want to get federal grants and loans. And also for, a lot of people, most people apply to multiple colleges, you get different financial aid offers. And most of those colleges rely on the FAFSA when deciding how much financial aid to offer to students. And, college decision day is May 1st, if I remember correctly. Parents and students want that information before May 1st so they can decide, are they going to choose the cheaper school? The way this is going, by the time people have to decide where to start their education, they're not going to have all of the really important financial information that they need.
Yeah, and obviously that's going to impact a lot of things, including how some of those schools function rolling into the fall. If there's not a certainty in terms of who's actually coming and showing up, what those needs are. I want to actually get to the parent portion that you just alluded to. The students not being able to decide on May 1st is one big deal, but parents not really knowing, hey, are we going to have to pick up another job, or are we going to have to sell some assets or change some behavior in order to make ends meet, or just not going to be able to make those kinds of decisions?
Right. This is so infuriating for university administrators who just don't have the manpower to individually calculate how much financial aid they're going to give to every student. It's infuriating to parents. And some schools, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about this. They're already reporting that they're getting fewer FAFSA forms from students.
And so then as you look at it, is there anything in the go forward? Are we hearing anything from the Department of Education in terms of any tweaks or streamlining or extension of dates or anything happening there? Or is it just kind of hunker down and everyone's just got to hold on?
I think that this year is probably just going to go down as, one of the great government website bungles. I think of the launch of the Affordable Care Act, that website, technical issues that sort of went down in history. And I think they'll probably have their act together a bit more next year. The infuriating thing about this is this started out as a way to make government better, right? Why should it be so difficult to fill out this form that millions of families have to fill out? The way they changed the form, it imports information directly from the IRS. That sounds great. But the problem is if you're going to make these changes, you need to make them right. And it probably would have been better to take another year and have next year's form be really good than to cause so much frustration for all of these families.
Yeah, and I'm going to quote you on that, Emma, for the GGB, the Great Government Bungle of 2024. So we'll quote you on that. And I want to get one other little piece of insight before I let you go, and that is this another one of those cases where what was passed in Congress, again, good intention, probably a great bumper sticker title of the bill, but not enough in there to actually say, here's how this has got to be done and executed. The agency then takes it over and clearly didn't have all the ducks in a row to actually be able to deliver.
Yeah, I'm not precisely sure. So the requirement for the FAFSA to be streamlined was part of a really big appropriations bill.
But I imagine it was more likely to be one of those situations where it was less specific. And in many ways, that makes sense, right? You know, the people who already run the FAFSA would probably know how to best streamline it. The problem is that they didn't end up doing that properly.
All right, fantastic perspective as always. And Emma Camp, of course, is the assistant editor at Reason. Emma, thanks so much for making time for us today.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, and that's Emma Camp, assistant editor at Reason, reason.com. You can check out her piece there. And this is just one of those infuriatingly unfair things that a lot of students and a lot of parents are going through because the process didn't get all the way done. And so you've got well over 200,000 students that can't get the forms and the answers to their financial aid requests because the system didn't work inside the agency, and there doesn't appear to be any relief in sight. As Emma pointed out, this will be one of the great government bungles of 2024, and we'll continue to watch that one play out as well. All right, we're going to step aside for one last commercial break. When we come back, we're going to come full circle and a few more lessons from the late Senator Joe Lieberman, his life and legacy. We've been reviewing that as we've gone through the day today. We'll finish up with some more highlights from my sit-down conversation with Senator Lieberman just last year. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, pet parents. With Progressive's collision coverage, you get extra protection for your cat or dog, because there's nothing worse than seeing your pet hurt. Like when you see their face after accidentally stepping on their tail, and you say, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Pickles." But as you kiss his nose and rub his little belly welly, you know Mr. Pickles is thinking, "You betrayed me." Anywho, Progressive pays up to $1,000 in vet bills if your pet is injured in an auto accident. Learn more at Progressive.com and watch where you step. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Collision coverage subject to policy terms. Not available in all states.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
I need new oil for my truck. Really, I need a new truck.
Mobile One is giving away a 2024 Chevy Colorado ZR2. When you pick up 5 quarts of Mobile One full synthetic with an STP extended life oil filter for $35.99, you're entered for a chance to win.
Whoa.
Other prizes include a year's supply of Mobile One or a $100 gift card.
Never been so excited for an oil change.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
No purchase necessary. Terms at AutoZone.com. Ends 5/27/24.
3 days only. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Save thousands on hot tubs and swim spas. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Utah State Fair Park. Hot tubs discounted 40 to 80% to the lowest possible price, starting at $29.99. Free professional delivery. Take possession tomorrow, next week, next month, or next season. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Shop over a dozen models of swim spas from 11 feet to over 19 feet. Swim spas offer low-impact exercise, active family fun, unsurpassed relaxation, and installation in one day. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Everything must go. Free parking, free admission. You can't afford to miss this. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
You wouldn't know it, but most financial advisors are put in a box. I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want to provide you a little insight about financial advisors. Most financial advisors have to sell what their company requires them to sell, and many advisors have to only adhere to what's called a suitability standard. A suitability standard is a limited standard of care, not requiring what's sold to be best, just suitable. Advisors with this loose standard often have limited investment and product selection. Trajan Wealth is held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest standard of care in the advisory business. And that's just one of the many reasons we have billions of dollars under our care and attract clients from other advisors. Raise your standards today and call Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Hi, everyone. It's Congressman Blake Moore here. As I've listened to your concerns during my recent in-person and telephone town halls, one thing is clear. Utahns are concerned about border security. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Biden administration's policies have allowed for over 8.5 million encounters nationwide, including over 7 million at the southern border, more than ever before in American history. Record amounts of fentanyl have come through our borders and led to heartbreaking outcomes for families who have lost loved ones to overdoses. For the sake of our community's safety and national security, something must change. This is why House Republicans swiftly passed the Secure the Border Act of 2023 to strengthen our southern border with new technologies, increase the number of Border Patrol agents, end catch and release, and require transparency from the Department of Homeland Security. I will keep fighting to make 1st District communities safer, and I encourage you to sign up for my weekly e-newsletter and follow me on social media at Rep. Blakemore to stay updated on my efforts. Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
What's in your garden? Oakdale Organic Compost nutrient-rich formula makes vegetables, flowers, trees, and lawns grow beautifully. No wonder it's the official compost of Thanksgiving Point. Visit Oakdale.com.
Rick at loansbyrick.com has some important information for anyone in Utah and Idaho who's thinking of buying a house. Do it now. Don't wait until summer, because home prices in those two states will likely increase by 10 to 20% due to in-migration from California and other states. That means a house that costs $400,000 right now will go up by $40 to $80,000 with multiple offers. Interest rates may drop later in the year, possibly to the 6% range, but the increased cost of the home will mean that your monthly payments will go up by a lot. So start looking and buy now. Refinance when the interest rates go down. Waiting to buy your home will only hurt you in the long run. For more details and buying strategies, call Rick at loansbyrick.com right now. 801-809-SAVE. Rick can evaluate your situation and get you on the path to buying a home today. 801-809-SAVE or click loansbyrick.com.
Rick Kirschenbaum, NMLS 241179 and Vintage Lending, NMLS 287106 are equal housing lenders. Some restrictions apply.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, police are looking for the driver of a car that rolled over and caught fire on I-15 near 21st South. A passenger in that car was taken into custody. Second, charges have been filed against a property owner near Brighton who confronted a snowboarder with a shotgun. Third, people are already arriving in southern Indiana for the solar eclipse, even though it doesn't happen until next week. Right now, 45 degrees with some rain in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. If you missed the first part of the show, we started our day talking about the passing of former Senator Joe Lieberman, who passed away yesterday at the age of 82. And so many lessons from his life and legacy. We're going to come back to those in a second. We also went in hour number 1 talking about someone else who had been on this show before and passed away, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, and talked about things about the fall of civilization and what leads up to it. Complexity, gridlock, irrational thinking and behavior, tribalism, and some of the important things we need to do, very simple things we need to do to keep our constitutional republic on track. And then, of course, we talked to Daniel Engberg from The Atlantic, a fascinating piece today about Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman and how he was regularly proclaiming that he was wrong, that he had this kind of curiosity and it was okay. And so he went at things in the right way. So you're going to want to go back and listen to the podcast today. I've taken so many notes. I'm going back to re-listen to our guests today because they helped me think again, not only about what I think I know, but things that I had never thought of before. And that's actually why we do this show. So let's round it out with some additional thoughts from a conversation I had with Senator Lieberman in his office in New York City. And much of this we have never aired before. And one of the things that he and I spoke about was, as a senator, he took an oath to the Constitution and what that meant for him, even in the face of really difficult circumstances. And we went back to the impeachment of then President of the United States, Bill Clinton, who he knew well. And it was one of those where, yes, it's easy to yell talking points and pejoratives at your enemies, but can you speak truth to your friends when they're wrong? And so as we sat down, he walked through what happened there with Bill Clinton in that scandal. And while he was the first one, the first Democrat in particular, to go to the floor of the Senate and call out the president for not living up to the principles they were trying to uphold.
It takes me back to when the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal broke. I had known Bill Clinton since he was at Yale Law School. I lived in New Haven, and we became friends. He was actually a volunteer in my very first campaign, for state senator. I was the first senator outside of Arkansas to support him when he ran for president in 1992. And I really believed in what he was doing. But then this awful scandal comes out, and I really wrestle at first because I want to believe his denial. So I remained silent but agitated. Then when he acknowledged that he had not told the truth about this relationship with this young woman, it boiled up in me. And there's no question my religious upbringing, but specifically the examples that the Bible provides, which send a message, which is that the greater your authority, the greater your responsibility to live by a code of right and wrong. Because if you don't uphold your values, presumably the values that you believe God wants you to uphold, the consequences are much more severe than if an average person doesn't uphold them. On the whole society, and the Hebrew Bible has so many examples. Moses, the great leader, doesn't get to go into the promised land because he has this one moment where he really, in a sense, loses faith in God, but also loses his temper. I could go on. King Saul doesn't explicitly carry out what God wants him to do, and the prophet Samuel takes his robe from him. I will tell you, at that time, when the Clinton-Lewinsky matter was dominating everybody's attention, including my own, a friend of mine who was Christian called me up, and he just jarred me by saying, remember the prophet Nathan went to David when he acted immorally with Bathsheba. And he said, I'm not saying you are the prophet Nathan, but you're the closest thing that America has to it right now. So you should speak out. And I did. It was painful because he was my friend. But I look back at it, and I'm glad I did it.
Doing the right thing is always the right thing. That's what leadership sounds like. That's what leadership acts like, even when it's not convenient. It would have been much easier for him to just remain silent. It actually forced then Senator Lieberman to lose a primary election to another Democrat. And then he had to run as an independent to keep that seat in the United States Senate. But he was willing to do it because it was the right thing and because he had taken an oath to the Constitution, and that mattered more to him than his own position of power. We need more who are willing to have that kind of conversation in our leadership positions today. One of the other things that we talked about, and actually he and I were exchanging messages just a little over a week ago, talking about the future of the country. And he always remained positive. He said there's a lot of people who are negative out there about the future of the country. He remained hopeful, and here's how he described what we all ought to be thinking about and be grateful for.
The first thing to say is that for a lot of reasons, people in America are more down on America and its future than they should be. I mean, we still are the freest country in the world, the country most full of opportunity, where you can go in a single generation from poverty to being at the height of financial success or political power. So the first thing is to appreciate it, and in a way not be dragged down by the vicious dialogue between political leaders in our country today. One of the things that would be best for the American people is to travel, and when you travel, ask people around the world what their view of America is, because we are still the beacon of hope. We're still the light unto a lot of the nations. We're far from perfect. We've gone through some tough times now that are self-inflicted, and I'm thinking of political partisanship and division. But in this looming competition between us and China, let's say, the people around the world really don't want to be dependent on China because they don't want to live under a system that the Chinese have.
Then Senator Lieberman, of course, went on many trips with John McCain, also went on a number of them. They were kind of the three amigos with Lindsey Graham. Talk about three very different folks. And I thought it was great that Lindsey Graham, who was the last of the three amigos, said in his social post today, he said, the good news is Joe Lieberman is in the hands of a loving God. The bad news is that John McCain has given him an earful today about how screwed up things are on Earth. And I am sure that's exactly what's going on up there today. Some fabulous conversations. I want to close out with one final thought in my conversation with Joe Lieberman. And he talked about what it is that we need to do as Americans to pull ourselves back from politics and get back to principle.
Part of that is for the American people to pull themselves back from the crossfire in our politics and just appreciate what we have. I mean, we are blessed to be Americans. I grew up with that. My grandparents were all immigrants. I always used to say my mother's mother, who we lived with for the first 8 years, and then she lived with us in our house. She was one of the greatest American patriots I ever met. Why do I say that? Because she had something to compare America to. She came from Central Europe, where she and her family had little economic opportunity. They were really impoverished. And she experienced religious discrimination as a Jew just all the time. My grandmother once said to me, you would have to be me, having come from where I came from, to know what it means to me when I walked to synagogue in this neighborhood, which was not a Jewish neighborhood. It was very mixed. And my Christian neighbors come up to me and say, "Good Sabbath, Mrs. Manger." So I later told that story, and I said, well, if you ask my grandmother where she was, she might not say America. She might say she thought she was in heaven. And we got to get back to appreciating all that we have as Americans, understanding that we have a lot of work to do to keep it as great as it's been.
We do have a lot of work to keep it as great as it has been. And as his grandmother said, is this America? No, it might be heaven. And I am sure that is where Joe Lieberman is today. Grateful for his life and legacy. I've had so many high-ranking folks text me and say they're a better person, they're a transformed person because they knew Joe Lieberman. That's leadership. That's statesmanship. And that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan, 43 degrees, raining in Salt Lake City. KSL's top story. A Brighton man is now facing criminal charges after a video showed him threatening a snowboarder with a shotgun. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe is live with the latest. Amy.
Jeff, this is a month after Lauren Richardson posted the video on Instagram, and it quickly went viral. In the video, you can hear 67-year-old Keith Stebbings say this is private property while pushing Richardson. Stebbings also at one point says, if you do it again, there'll be holes in you. Now, Stebbings is charged with aggravated assault and making a threat of violence. KSL legal analyst Greg Skorda says property owners can take action if their safety is being threatened, but he says this went too far.
And perhaps holding a gun at your side would be one thing. Even that, I think, would be a stretch. But brandishing a gun for someone who's merely standing on your property and not in your home is further than what the law allows a homeowner to do.
Charging documents also note that police were unable to find any private property signs on Stebbings' land. Reporting live, Amy Kobabe,